Now to an ABC News exclusive with our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz. She's on the ground in Afghanistan as U.S. forces packed up at Bagram Airfield as part of the U.S. withdrawal of forces from that country after nearly 20 years. Martha spoke exclusively to the American general overseeing that departure and his hopes and concerns for the country now. Here's Martha.
We are flying over Bagram Airfield, once home to 38,000 U.S. troops, now nearly abandoned. The fighter jets gone, nearly everything gone. This is what packing up 20 years of war in Afghanistan looks like. The U.S. had a mission when they invaded Afghanistan right after 9/11. To deny al-Qaeda a base of operations and deter attacks on the U.S. homeland from Taliban safe haven. But 2 decades later, the Taliban remains, and the Biden administration is drawing this mission to a close. Some of this equipment has been here for nearly 20 years, every unit that arrived bringing more and more. But now, every day, at least 15 massive cargo jets fly it out of here. Bagram Airfield is the U.S.'s largest military base in Afghanistan. Many of the men and women here who are packing up don't remember 9/11, the day that changed America. Now they're here, closing out the chapter on America's longest war.
I'm very grateful to be a part of it. We've been here for 20 years, so this is, the war has started before I was born, so it's like crazy that I get to be here to close it down and be a part of something that was here before I was even brought up.
Four-star General Austin Scott Miller is overseeing the withdrawal. He has spent nearly 9 of the last 20 years on deployments and is now the longest-serving general in Afghanistan at 3 years. Paramount is safety and security of the troops. You've gotten a ton out already. How do you assure that they're safe?
Yeah, a clear objective is, not only a safe but an orderly withdrawal. If there are attacks, we certainly have the ability to respond to those.
But as American troops depart, fear that large swaths of Afghanistan are falling back into the hands of the Taliban. The spate of attacks dramatically increasing. Last month, an explosion at this girls' school killing 85, mostly young women and girls. I've been in Kabul here several days, talked to a lot of Afghans. They're very concerned that the Taliban will move into Kabul. How likely is that?
I understand that concern. It goes back to trying to understand the security situation across the country. If you go back to what the Taliban's objectives are, they want to take over. And so at some point, there's that implies that at some point they are in Kabul.
Last week, President Biden meeting with Afghan leaders promising that American cooperation in the region will continue.
Our troops may be leaving, but support for Afghanistan is not ending in terms of support and maintenance of helping maintain their military as well as economic and political support.
But Afghan forces already feeling the toll of not having the presence of American troops by their side. And we've seen these alarming reports, alarming video of Taliban massacring Afghan forces. What's happening right now, and how alarmed are you?
We should be concerned. The loss of terrain and the rapidity of that loss of terrain has to be concerning. Hope actually matters, and morale actually matters. And so as you watch the Taliban moving across the country, what you don't want to have happen is that the people lose hope and they believe they now have a foregone conclusion presented to them.
Throughout 2 decades, the U.S. lost nearly 2,400 service members and poured over $2 trillion into this war. What happens next in Afghanistan, General Miller tells us, is left up to the Afghan people.
This is their country. There's been a lot invested, as you mentioned at the outset. And with that investment, it's, how I've described it, they have to hold. The Afghan security forces have to hold.
Some within the Afghan forces are holding out hope. The Afghan Special Forces commander is confident that Afghanistan will survive without the presence of Americans.
We have got and we have learned a lot from our friends and partners in the last 2 decades. And we based on those lessons, we are going to expand and extend and make our army great to keep the situation in Afghanistan the same or better than today.
Back in Bagram, the soldiers continue to draw down. And in a few weeks' time, General Miller will be able to say he's completed the mission of bringing U.S. troops home. Any thoughts as you leave this base?
All of them are, as you leave them, you wonder if this is the last time you're going to see this base. Will you be back in the future?
Martha Raddatz now joining me from Washington, finally back from that trip to Afghanistan and Iran as well. Martha, it's just remarkable hearing you talk to those service members who weren't even alive for the 9/11 attacks, which launched the war in Afghanistan. What's General Miller's message to those who have been serving there in the past 20 years?
An unequivocal message, Kira, that everyone who has served there accomplished what they went there to do, and they should be proud of their service. But of course, he is concerned about what comes next. But it really was quite extraordinary talking to all these young people who, most of them, didn't remember 9/11 at all. And then, of course, one of those soldiers said she wasn't even born yet.
Wow. We also heard General Miller there asking whether Americans will have to be back on that base in the future. And you spoke to him about how that actually happened in Iraq when the U.S. withdrew forces in 2011 but had to go back in. How concerned is he that that could happen now in Afghanistan?
Well, I think he is concerned, and I have to tell you, Keir, for me, it was somewhat a repeat of history just being there in these final days for our troops being in Afghanistan. I was on what was supposed to be the last convoy out of Iraq, and of course, years later, the U.S. was back in Iraq because ISIS was storming that country. And I really directly asked General Miller about that, and he said there's basically no guarantee that they won't be back. He's, of course, hopeful they won't have to come back and things will be all right. But you take a look at that country right now, and Taliban is overwhelming many of those districts.
And finally, Martha, we saw last night that President Biden ordered airstrikes on Iran-backed militias near the Iraq-Syria border. How's the administration explaining that decision now?
Well, basically, they are taking action. They call it defensive action because these Iranian-backed militias have been using these commercially available drones, pretty small drones, and they're loading them up with mortars and dropping those on U.S. bases. So the administration says we're taking action. They launched those airstrikes, and they are continuing a back and forth with those Iranian-backed militias, Kara.
Martha Raddatz, glad you're back safely. Thanks, Martha.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.